Good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming. It's a good thing we got this big venue and the stage they built for us because of this crowd. We expected a few more people, but this is great. With a smaller number, we can be a little more, have a little more opportunity for dialogue and discussion and getting feedback from you. So thanks a lot for coming. Hopefully you're here for the presentation on the Redlands 360 overall development plan. If you're here for the meeting with the football coaches, that's in another building. So anyway, my name is Doug Quimby. I'm the president and principal owner of La Plata Communities, Inc. La Plata Communities is a master plan community development company headquartered in Colorado Springs. We've been in business for about 25 years. We've developed several master plan communities in the Colorado Springs area, thousands of acres of land, multiple thousands of homes, office space, commercial space, shopping centers, hospitals, just about every kind of real estate you can name. And La Plata Communities is a partner, is the manager for a limited liability company called Redlands 360 LLC. Redlands 360 has two owners, two members. A La Plata entity is one of them. The other is Grand Junction Land Company. Grand Junction Land Company is the historical owner of the property. The principal of Grand Junction Land Company, Robert McGregor, is here tonight. He's the gentleman that is so, well, I'll talk about him later. Anyway, so that's enough about us. I know you probably don't care to hear me brag about how great we are. If you want more information about our company, you can go to laplatahome.com. That's our website. You can see all the projects we've done in Colorado and get a sense of who we are. This is our first project in Grand Junction. Why are we doing this? This is my hometown. My family moved here in the 1960s, early 60s. We've been here ever since. I left quite a while ago and ended up in Colorado Springs, but I've kept a lot of contact here. As I said, I have family here. I've always loved this town. Served on the board of this college for the last 8 years, board of trustees. So I get over here a lot. I understand what's happening here. I know a lot about this town. So even though I'm an interloper from Colorado Springs, I do have some deep connections to Grand Junction and really want to do a cool project here. So is there anybody here that doesn't live in the vicinity of the property? It's okay if you are, but just trying to get a sense of the crowd. Is there anybody here who hasn't hiked or walked or biked or recreated on the property in the last few years? Well, that's due to the graciousness of Mr. McGregor, who's allowed people to use the property for many years. And we know that's a lot of people that develop an attachment to it and really like this property the way it is, and open space. So, but it's not going to stay completely open space. This property is going to get developed. You all know that Grand Junction is going to grow. It's inevitable that it's going to grow. And it's going to grow because it's become a really cool place. I mean, it's a great place to live. It's a great place to recreate. It's a great place to work. And people want to stay or move to places like that. So growth here is going to happen. And if that's going to happen, then you want to make sure that you have the right kind of growth so that it stays a cool place and it doesn't get messed up by growth. And that's what I think we're pretty good at doing. I think it's fair to say that I need a script because I'm old and can't remember things so well anymore. Um, I think it's fair to say there's never been a project like this in Grand Junction. It's different in many ways. First of all, there's the sheer size of the parcel. It's 624 acres total, um, contiguous ownership, one owner. Um, that's a square mile of land to give you some context. It's a big piece of property. And most of you know that because you've been there. Um, it's also an infill, what's known as an infill development, which simply means there's development all around it. There are homes and other things on all four sides of this property, so it's the last piece to develop in this area. And we'll talk a little bit more about infill later. Um, because it's so big, it's going to be a really long-term project. It's not all going to develop overnight. This is 20 to 30 years from the start until it's finished. So all these things are going to happen over time. They're not all going to happen at once. And the really interesting thing about the property, we've alluded to it before, is the historical use of the property. People have hiked and biked and walked their dogs and otherwise gone on the property for many years, notwithstanding that it's been private property all that time. I want everybody to know that under our plan, we will continue to allow public access to the property. We're going to preserve many of the trails that are on there. We're going to build new ones. We're going to improve some that are there. We're going to build some that aren't there now. And we're going to make the trails sustainable, better than they are, usable by virtually anyone that wants to use them, different styles of trails. And we'll go into more detail on that when we show the plan. But we are not going to cut off public access. So you'll still be able to use it. The other thing that makes it different is that it is probably the first true master plan community in Grand Junction, as that term is generally understood in the real estate development industry. So what makes a master plan community? First of all, the key word is community. The whole design, the whole intention of it is to create a sense of community, a sense of belonging, a sense of place, a sense of connection, and not just subdivision or a series of subdivisions. It connotates an integrated single plan under common control. Everything fits together. It's not a bunch of unrelated subdivisions. There's a variety of products within master plan communities. Single family, detached homes, townhomes, maybe condos, apartments, virtually every housing type that is accepted in the marketplace exists within a well-designed master plan community. There's also a mixture of lot sizes and home sizes, densities within the project. Most importantly, there's a range of prices. Their products lower priced all the way up to multi-million-dollar homes like you normally see on the Redlands. But there are also lower priced houses, move-up homes, things like that, so that a wide spectrum of the community can afford to live in the community. Also usually includes commercial, small numbers of commercial parcels to serve the master plan community itself. This property isn't going to have a big shopping mall or anything like that. It's not suitable for that, but it will have some small component of commercial use which serves the residents of the property. There'll be overall cohesive plans addressing traffic circulation, stormwater, detention, drainage, infrastructure, utilities. It'll have architectural themes that are consistent throughout the community, design guidelines to ensure quality and aesthetics and good design that fits with the land. ensures both variety and harmony. Um, Extensive common areas will be provided throughout the community, and that will include parkways and landscaping along streets and little pocket parks. Also be lots of, and hopefully things like public art throughout the project, all of which will be maintained by homeowners association or a metro district. Of course, the main thing about master plan communities is that they include a lot of amenities for the residents of the community, and in this case, for the public at large. Those amenities include the trail system that I alluded to before, other parks and open space, perhaps a recreation center, other kinds of facilities, lots of open space. Most of that will be public and have public access. Some of it will be private just for the residents, but most of it would be public recreational facilities. The master plan communities have strong covenants with professional management. They also provide economies of scale, which allow, when you have a big project, they lower costs because of economies of scale. Also allows us to mitigate off-site impacts, which a small subdivision can't do. Contributing to off-site improvements like traffic signals or street widening or other things like that that might be incrementally caused by what we're doing. And again, I go back to the main thing, the whole idea of the master plan community is to create a community and not just another subdivision. There's certainly going to be change with this development. There's going to be houses where there was nothing but open space. That's going to provide a lot of good things, a lot of jobs for 20, 30 years with people building houses, a lot of sales of building products and other things, landscapers, architects, landscapers, attorneys and accountants, all going to get work from this project over a long period of time. So it'll have a really good economic impact. Of course, we all know that growth does have negative impacts, and so we have to control those and mitigate them and provide things that are good to overcome them. This isn't all going to be open space anymore. There are going to be houses there. Some people might think that's a bad thing. Times there'll be inconvenience of construction. There'll certainly be more traffic, kids in schools. But remember, this isn't going to happen all at once. It's going to happen incrementally, slowly over time. So those things will be mitigated, and we'll be able to absorb those and take care of those and manage those things so that this property stays really cool and the town benefits from it. A lot of times in previous public meetings, the question has come up from neighbors and citizens who say, we're not against development, but why do you have to develop this property? It's so cool. Why can't we just leave it like it is? Well, besides the obvious answer, which is this is the property that we own and control, we don't own 600 acres somewhere else. There are a lot of reasons why we want to develop this particular property as opposed to somewhere else. First reason is because it's a fantastic, spectacular piece of land. It'd be a great place to live, great place to work, great place to recreate. It is the best piece of developable land in Western Colorado, maybe in the state. And I know this because it's my job to go around the state finding these pieces. This is a fantastic piece of property. and it's going to be developed. Somebody's going to do it. And I'd rather it be us because we think we're pretty good at it. We have a connection to Grand Junction. We're honoring the history and allowing the space. And frankly, not a lot of developers would do that. So also, I alluded to the fact that this is an infill parcel. Infill is the most responsible way to develop property if you can do it, because it makes the best use of existing services and resources. Compared to developing on the fringes, it costs less, it causes less traffic, longer commutes or shorter commutes, and the infill, better accessibility. As I said, access to services and schools and other things. It's just a much more efficient way to develop. Another reason is that we want to build a community that's based on the outdoor recreational ethic that's developed here in Grand Junction, has made this such a cool place. We want a place where people can still walk and hike and bike and bring their dogs and have fun and enjoy the land, even though it's private. We're going to preserve much of what's here and make some of it better in some ways. Again, it's going to be different, but it's still going to be available for the things that it's been used for. I want hundreds of people to be able to wake up every day at their home and look out and see some of the fantastic views that you can see from this property, to watch the sunrise over the Grand Mesa or the sunset in the Monument, or look at the book cliffs and how fantastic they look at different times of day from virtually every place on this property. It's just really cool place. And a lot of people would like to live there. And finally, this piece is because I want people from all walks of life to be able to live in a great place, right? Just because you don't live in $1 million home doesn't mean you shouldn't have $1 million view, right? I want, as we said, there's a range of prices. We want teachers and nurses and firemen and working people to be able to live in a place that's as cool as this, and not just have another big like community with $1 million houses for rich people. Not that there's anything wrong with rich people. I like them. And I think we all want to be there. But I think our goal is to have a place where lots of different income levels can live. So with that, I'll shut up. Wanted to introduce a few people. I alluded to the fact that Robert McGregor, the property owner, is here. Jane Quimby, my sister, and she is our local project manager. She works for La Plata. She's the local contact for any questions anybody might have. Later, she'll come up here and give you contact information in case you have questions or need to talk to her about anything. Also, we have Cody Humphrey, who's wandering around up here. He's the director of planning for La Plata. Cody's going to go through the vision that we have for the property, the overall vision. And then Ted Chavone of Chavone Robertson Associates, who's our local planning firm, doing most of the actual planning for the site. And then after that, we'd love to hear your questions, get any feedback, comments, criticisms, and if you want to give us compliments, that'd be great too. With that, I'll turn it over to Cody.
Thanks, Doug. I'm going to stand behind the podium so I can look at my notes and address the screen. Then we're going to go through some slides here and talk about the vision for the community. My name is Cody Humphrey, as Doug said. I'm the Director of Planning for La Plata Communities. And I will be talking about the community vision. And so the community vision is a pretty important part of doing a master plan community like this. essentially establishes a lot of the character for the community. At this point where we're at with this process, what you see is, many months of going back and forth and figuring out what we want this community to look like, and the vibe and the character and the styles that we want to portray when we do the design for this community. So before we do that, I'm going to highlight a little bit of the project overview. Doug's talked about this a little bit, but I'll dive into it a little bit more. The property is 624 acres, and it will be developed with a spectrum of different housing options, types, architectural styles, as well as active and passive recreational opportunities. In terms of the density, overall, we've derived a range of total units of 13 to 1,800 units. Now, of course, that's over a number of years, 20 to 30 years, over the life of the project. But when you break that down into an overall density for the gross acreage of the site, it's 2.16 to 3 DUs per acre. And then we also anticipate 3.2 acres of commercial property located in the upper northwest corner, and Ted will touch on that a little bit later. So one of the first things you see when you get on the site, and if you've been on the site, obviously there's a reason that you're there, partly because of recreation and also the views. The views are pretty fantastic there. They include the Colorado National Monument, Book Cliffs, Grand Mesa, and I'll dive into those a little bit more here soon. But the Upper Mesa part of the project, or the property, you can also see the Redlands Mesa Golf Course as well. And it's a short drive or a bike ride to the Lunch Loop area, which is pretty popular as well. Due to the land being surrounded by existing development, as Doug mentioned, this could technically be considered an infill project. So it's a donut hole, and it is surrounded by existing development. And so that's why it could be considered infill project. And because of that location, the existing infrastructure within the public right-of-way is directly adjacent to the project, and is easy to connect to the existing infrastructure. So community vision can simply be defined as an image of the community's future. It's a way to help define the direction of the community and serves as the beginning of the master planning process. And so the vision of Redlands 360 consists of 4 key elements. Those elements are the land, the modern history, and that modern history being the last 20 to 30 years, the views, and the amenities. And we'll dive into those a little bit and talk about what we anticipate the amenities will be in the community. So the land always plays an important part in master planning. If you've been out on the property, you understand that the property itself is pretty unique. There's a lot of change in topography, there's drainage ways, there's existing sparse vegetation, a lot of rock outcroppings. And so the land itself is pretty unique. When we do the master planning for this project, we take that into consideration. We take all these different elements and we put them in a pot and look at them. And out comes our master plan that really tries to enhance and preserve a lot of those features of the property. So the 4 elements that I'm going to talk about here in the next few slides are the overall character of the property, the topography, the drainage patterns, and the 4 Brothers Plateaus. And those 4 Brother Plateaus is a play off the name of the Three Sisters Park. And we'll dive into that a little bit more and show you specifically what those are. So you can see in this slide here, a couple of images as I was talking about the rock outcroppings, the change in the topography, the plateaus, the views, the existing vegetation. Those all play into our master planning when we are looking at really where development should go and where trails and amenities should also be included into the community. So this particular graphic here is what is called a slope analysis. And so this is one of the several diagrams that are created as we do the master planning, but this is probably one of the more important ones. The slope analysis helps define the slope percentages on the property, and that allows us to then begin to determine what is the best developable land on the site. And so when you look at this particular graphic, the areas that are clear or you can kind of see the aerial underneath, those are 0 to 10% slopes, which consists of 40% of the land. Green is 10 to 20%, yellow is 20 to 30% slopes, and then anything that is in pink is 30% or above. And basically, that land in the pink is undevelopable. And so that consists of 11% of the land, which is about 70 acres. So right out of the gate, we have 70 acres that we cannot touch, and essentially is going to remain open space. The 20 to 30% definitely presents some challenges when it comes to developing on those slopes. And so 16% of the land in the yellow there, and it's kind of hard to see in this graphic. But again, this is the type of analysis that we do when we start doing the master planning and trying to understand where the best ground for development is. As you can see here, this is the location of the Four Brothers, and so these are the high points that you see. And these are the three major drainage ways. So you begin to see this pattern that's starting to be created: high point, low point, high point. And it kind of goes from the northwest down to the southeast portion of the property. And so in this particular picture, we're looking north. And again, you can start to see where the high points are and where the low points are. And this is, a sunset photo. The high points are highlighted by the sun obviously hitting those high points, and in the low points, you can see the shadows that are created. Again, a similar image, but this one's looking east. This one in particular highlights the Four Brother plateaus. And so what's really interesting about those, if you've ever made it up to the top of any of those, they're really flat. It's almost as if somebody carved the top off. And so we highlight these Four Brothers because this really is what starts to create the story about the open space and the trails that we're going to incorporate into the community. And again, you can see in this particular picture the four high points, and then in between there are the drainage ways, and this is looking north towards the book cliffs. So the modern history, as I mentioned, we aren't necessarily going to be focusing on historical use of the property, hundreds of years ago, but we're talking more about 20 and 30 years. And to many locals, this is known as the water tower parcel. And so with that, and over the course of the last 20 to 30 years, a lot of trails have been created, and a lot of stewardship has been put into this property. People have taken it upon themselves to keep it clean and to use it as if it was their own. And so the three items that I'll be talking about in terms of the history are the land stewardship, the hiking and biking trails, and art and fun. So, excuse me. So the land stewardship, basically, we understand that, the use that gets, the use of the property itself. I was just out there actually today and saw probably nearly 10, 15 people. It was in the morning. We understand that a lot of locals within walking distance or driving distance of the property itself, they use it every day. And so that land stewardship is reflected in the trails that have been built and, the use that it does have. And so we want to respect that with our master planning process. Ted will get into this more when we get into the master plan itself. But our effort here is to actually try to preserve some of those trails and existing open spaces out there with the plan itself. Here you can see some of those trails that I'm referring to. If you've hiked that area or biked it, several of those photos are some of the really fun trails, especially in the drainage ways. The bottom right corner, that one is a really fun trail. It's very unique. It has a lot of character to it. And so, again, our goal here is to not necessarily cut off public access, but is trying to enhance what is already out there and marry it with the development itself. So the gnomes, this is part of something that's pretty unique, and we recognize that. The gnomes that were out in the Pinyon Pines, that adds an artistic flair to the property. It adds something unique that you wouldn't find anywhere else. And so we like to call this in the planning world, placemaking. These are the kinds of things that people take upon themselves to add character to the land. Now, it should be noted, though, that these gnomes were not on our particular property. They were just off our site. They have been removed, I assume, by the artist, probably with concern about what would happen to them. But this is the type of character that we like to see. This is the type of placemaking that we want to recreate as we move through the development. The same goes for this guy here, Mr. Skeleton. So he's got his mask on. He's just like us, and he's out in the open. But again, this is something unique. I don't know who put it out there. I don't know if anybody does here. But somebody took the time and effort to actually add it to the land and put it right next to a trail system that's currently out there. But it's kind of fun, and these are the kinds of things that we want to incorporate as well as part of the sculpture that that we'll talk about, the art, the character, and the amenity package. So I'm going to quickly move through the views here. I think we all know what the views are like out there, but again, this is one of the ideas, one of the things that we want to enhance as part of the master planning. The 360-degree views, that's where we came up with the name, Redlands 360. And so these four different views right here of these natural elements of Colorado National Monument, the Book Cliffs, depending on how you want to spell it, Grand Mesa, and Uncompahgre Plateau. I'll highlight these four in the next couple of slides here. So as you can see here, the view towards Colorado National Monument is pretty demanding of your attention, and especially in this picture. And you have views of this, the monument from generally almost anywhere on the site. The Book Cliffs are to the north, and again, as that land slopes to the north, slopes down, and it kind of crests towards the Colorado National Monument, the views towards the Book Cliffs open up and are pretty amazing as well. And this particular picture is pretty incredible considering the sunset and the shades and the pinks and purples and oranges. It's an amazing view, and we want to share it with others. The Grand Mesa. What's interesting about the Grand Mesa is it contrasts with those other two images, other two views, right? It's heavily vegetated, and also another view to the east that's pretty demanding of your attention. And then Uncompahgre Plateau with the Dominguez Escalante Conservation Area in the middle ground there. The furthest of the views, but yet it still is something that we can orient homes and amenities towards to take advantage of that as well. So as for the amenities, as we began to dive into the idea of what the amenities would be, we really were wanting to focus on more outdoor focused amenities. And so those would include active and passive areas, parks, open space, multi-use trail systems, enhanced landscaping, unique fencing and signage, and community art are all different elements that we are wanting to include in this community. And the 4 elements that I'll be talking about are the parks and open space, trails, fencing, monumentation, and community landscaping. So here's a collection of images of potential park and open space proposed ideas. And so the image on the right is of what they call the miniature incline in Castle Rock. And if you've ever heard or seen the real incline in Manitou Springs, we really think that there's an opportunity for something unique in this type of nature out here on the property as well because of the topography change. So a series of a couple of different inclines up the plateaus, up the Four Brothers. So that's one option. The trailheads with signage, public art, and even proposed ideas of what the parks could look like, as well as offering opportunities for shade and shadow, relief from the sun, from the 104 degrees that's outside right now. So we may not have enough, we may not have shade trees to be able to provide that, so we would have to physically create shadow and shade with sunshades like what is shown up there. The trails, we look at the trails as almost like a highway system where it has a hierarchy. Trails that have hard surface trails, soft surface trails, and then single track trails. And so all these trails will be included in our designs as we move through different filings. And Ted will touch on the trails map that we have. But these trails are obviously something very important to us and to the community and to you guys as well. Obviously, you've used the property because of the trail system. So fencing and monumentation, these are just a couple of examples of what the fencing might be or look like. Fencing and monumentation is much bigger and broader than what's just showing up here, but is something that's important to a master plan community. It adds a lot of character. It's also included in the entry monumentations, the welcoming of you into the community. And then the community landscaping. Really what we want to focus on here is xeriscape, low water use type plants, shrubs, trees, perennials, but still have a landscape that has interest and color and is inviting. We may use turf in certain areas, but it wouldn't be overly done. It would be used in oasis type settings where we highlight entry monumentations or in park areas where kids would be able to play. But we are not looking to use a lot of turf because of its water use. And then finally, the design drivers. So the design drivers are a pretty interesting aspect to a master plan community. And from our point of view, design drivers actually help us make decisions into the future on all different types of design aspects. And when we get into details of these different filings and different phases within this community, if we have a question, we can always rely back on these design drivers. And so I'll highlight these pretty quickly. The first states that it's create a community master plan that is focused on promoting pedestrian-oriented atmosphere, an inclusive culture, and an outdoor lifestyle. The second states commit to putting a pedestrian first, where uninterrupted open space, which is very important on our plan, and a variety of trail types offer a safe and alternative means of transportation for residents throughout the entirety of the community. The third states celebrate the amazing views, 360-degree vistas, unique landforms like the Four Brothers and the social trails that are found on site. The fourth states offer a variety of amenities specifically geared toward getting residents and families outdoors. And that's important to us. The fifth states provide a mix of housing product and architectural styles, establish a unique community character at a variety of price points. And the sixth states provide an enhanced community landscaping that is water conserving, xeric in nature, and appropriately fits the existing geography of the Colorado Plateau. And so with that, I'd like to introduce Ted Chavone, who has a planning and landscape architecture firm here in town, and he's also the lead planner for Redlands 360. So thank you.
Good afternoon. I've been able to work on this plan. It's been great. And part of what it involves is working with the city and working within their guidelines. I want to point out we do have a lot of city staff here. We have the Public Works Director with Trent Prawl. We have the Community Development Director with Tamara Allen. We have Rick Doris, Development Engineer. And we have two planners here with us. And so they're going to keep us on track. La Plata Communities has recently submitted an annexation and a petition for annexation, as well as a metro district. The annexation is for about 240 acres. The metro district was for about 600 plus acres. We're now going to try to incorporate the plan in with those, because collectively it all has to work to form the unified project that we're presenting. So this is the property, and we can see that this is the outline of the 600 plus acres. There's 5 parcels: parcel 1, parcel 2, parcel 3, parcel 4, and parcel 5. We also have the Bureau of Land Management parcel at the bottom, which is next to Canyon Rim. And this is the storage tank site to give you some orientation. It's about 300 feet of grade difference from the top to the bottom of the site. Preliminary discussions with the city was to do an outline development plan. And that's because of the idea of being able to do a lot more creative things. I want to summarize in telling you that the annexation is for parcel 3 and parcel 4. The rezone is for parcel 2, and we're going to turn all of it into a planned development. So this is our existing zoning. And again, the uncolored area is the county, and this is county PD. This is county R4. This is city R4. And then this is in the city as a planned development zone, and this is in the city as a planned development zone. But those planned development zones do not have a plan. And so we don't know what the original density was supposed to be. We don't, and so we need to put a plan underneath those. And also just the idea of getting all of these properties as a city plan development zone. So that's one of the tools that we work with is the city zoning. There's the future land use plan. Again, here's the property boundary. And currently on this site, in the future land use plan, there's 6 different designations from conservation to residential low, residential medium low, and neighborhood center. And to these, we can put a density range. Because when you go into the documents for the future land use plan, it will tell us that within, I'm going to make this up, but like in residential medium, you can do anything from maybe an R2 to an R8. So when I look at those spans that we can do here, the minimum density that we could put on this 600 acres by this document would be 850 units. The maximum density we could put on this property using that same logic is 7,275 units. That's quite a range. And that is also a density range of 1.4 units per acre to 12.1 units per acre. That's not realistic. But it's our comparison number for this project, which is looking at the 1,800 units, actually 1,500 to 1,800 units, which is a density range of 2.16 to 3 units per acre. So we're at the lower end of what this would allow. The Grand Junction Circulation Plan is another document that is a guide for us. It's adopted with the city. It's showing Broadway. Well, you got Broadway, the Parkway, South Camp, but Broadway's in red and it is a principal arterial. The Parkway and South Camp are in blue and those a dark blue, and those are major collectors. You have access in from Renaissance and down here out of Canyon Rim. That's a lighter blue, and those are considered minor collectors. But also on this is a plan, the circulation plan is this yellow dotted line that goes through the site. It goes from Canyon Rim through the site. It goes from Renaissance through the site. It's unclassified, but it is, its purpose is to say the city wants to see that circulation, and the road will get classified as the plan develops. This is the concept plan of when we start to pull together some of the things that Cody was pointing out with Four Brothers, the idea of multiple neighborhoods. So what we are looking at is being able to preserve those view corridors, both north to south, the access between the brothers, and it's generally up the current Ute Water road, the access with the Four Brothers, and creating 6 neighborhoods between Canyon Rim, the 4 neighborhoods you could have here, and one at South Camp. Each one would have its own trails, and although I'll show you in a minute how the whole trail system works. And again, we're showing the road that would be the primary road through the site, hooking the primary entrances that are shown here. This is the outline development plan, and I'm going to talk a little bit here, and I'll come back to it. But this is showing. This is what we'll be submitting to the city. The city wants to see a document that speaks to the various land uses. On this plan, we're showing about 3.2 acres of commercial. We're showing 54 acres of multifamily. That would be in these purple areas. We're showing 345 acres of single family. That would be in these turquoise sort of bluish areas. And then the remainder is open space. As you see, the rim areas, the Four Brothers, the exterior edges, drainage ways, and also with those are a lot of the existing trails. This open space is more than 30% of the project property. We also will speak to phasing, we'll speak to dimensional standards when we hand this into the city. But again, this is the graphic support for that overall development, that outline development plan. I like to use an illustrative because I think it's a little showier and tells us a little bit more information than the actual ODP that we submit. We're calling out the idea of different housing product types. We've got custom homes, we've got patio homes, we've got 3 or 4 single family types in here. We're calling them 50-foot, 60-foot, 70-foot wide lots. They may end up being less or more, but the idea was to create different products for different demographics and to just get the diversity up here. And so you start to see the mixture of housing product types that we're considering. You can see the open space that was shown on the other plan. You can see the road system, not only the loop that goes through, but internal loops that are going to work to these various neighborhoods. You can see the idea of some ponds. Those may be, I'm going to call them wet water ponds. They may be detention ponds. We're still going through the whole drainage analysis. The road system is purposefully drawn this way without making a connection here. We feel, the development team feels that that helps with traffic calming on the whole project. It helps maintain the view corridor. It limits the interruption of the trails that we talked about. We may not win on that one, but in going through the process with the city. But at this point in time, that is our desire, and we'll be fighting hard for that. Also working with the Bureau of Land Management on the piece that would cross here and securing the trail that goes across the BLM property. Cody showed you a slope map, but what I've done here is superimpose the proposed open space onto that slope map. So again, you can see the predominantly steep areas, the drainages, the existing bike trails, the rim. Those are all areas that are to be respected and preserved as we move through this project. And when we show an area like this for a trail or for a drainage, we've given it a width up there, but we actually expect that width to vary. As you go through the division, the subdivision design, you're going to find that's going to probably enlarge in most cases, but it's the starting point. And a commitment that would be with the ODP. We also have a trails map showing different categories of trails. We have in, if you can see the colors, we have in blue and dashed blue the existing trails or on and off site that we plan to maintain. The gold trails are new trails that we plan on putting on the site that again would be public trails. We have these little maroonish trails that come in that are just at this point in time indicative of connecting those subdivisions to the trail system so that everybody is interconnected with walking and biking paths. We also have this green trail which is one of the few that would be an 8-foot wide concrete path as an entire loop around the project to just to allow the sort of casual use of and still have the ability to see all the property. So coming back to the illustrative here, we are looking at what really amounts to 4 access points. It would be a reconfiguration of Broadway. It would be coming off of the Redlands Parkway, as well as potentially coming off of South Camp. This particular entrance was a alternative. The map that you saw in the circulation plan showed coming straight up out of the Renaissance project. And La Plata is also doing the Renaissance project here. And we could determine that that just wasn't going to happen because of the grades. You just could not go straight up that hillside. And the city agreed. And so this is the alternative to that. And it takes that access point out of using that neighborhood. The Canyon Rim access down here, this subdivision is going to be submitted very soon. We've gone through the public processes on that. We also incorporated a lot of traffic calming in the plan of that, where we've gone from a narrower road section to a little bit wider to then matching up to the width of the road section down here, as well as an 8-foot wide attached concrete path there, so that as this moves up the hillside, we can tie it all together. Again, I think I've already spoken to the mixture of the uses and the varying lot widths. I've also talked, I think, pretty much about the trail system. Looking at a total perimeter trail, we did have somebody last night ask about and point out you are 360, so how about a total trail around the edge? And we have it in here, but there is a piece up here that we need to look at making that connection, and the developers are committed to doing that. We are required to submit a phasing plan as part of the ODP process. As you've been told, this project is a 20 to 30 year project. Let's call it a 24-year project, because that way I could take 8 phases and give each one 3 years. And that's kind of where we're at right now. There's some serious thinking that has gone into this with where phase 1 and phase 2 and 3 and 4 make sense. At the same time, something could change where it's like, okay, let's just keep building out this area and start doing those phases before here, or vice versa. And we know that. We know it'll come to market demand and infrastructure sense. And the city allows us to work with them on changing up the phasing plan. But at this point in time, this is pretty much the phasing plan that will be submitted with the ODP, showing these 8 phases, with each one taking about 3 years to start. I think you also heard where I think Doug mentioned that the probability and the target would be 80 houses a year. And so that's when you look at that combined with the phasing plan, it's mathematically the way it all works out. So I'm going to end my presentation here just again to show you the ODP that we will be submitting to the city. It'll have a lot of the documentation you've seen tonight. It may not have everything you've seen tonight, but you need to know that it's based on everything you've seen tonight. And with that, we'll open it up for questions. Yes, sir. Oh, wait a minute. Do we have a microphone? Thank you, Jane.
Thank you. What are your plans with regard to water, both domestic irrigation and sewage disposal?
What was the third one, sir?
Sewage disposal?
So the whole project will be on Ute water. And that'll be domestic for everything drink, potable. And there will be new sewer system installed, of course, to take it all the way down to the main lines. And Mark, I assume our civil engineer, Mark Austin, is here. It's down in Broadway. So it would be connected down to there. The irrigation water, there's about 75 shares for this property. And the idea would be to, in fact, the idea would be to pull it out of the canal here and put it into some pond systems that would then allow us to pump it to those select locations. And when I say select locations, we may have some wet water ponds, but we do anticipate roadside landscaping. We anticipate entryway landscaping at neighborhoods. We anticipate park areas that would be irrigated. And so that ditch water is for those things. It is not for homes. There will not be irrigation water delivered to homes for two reasons. Well, maybe it's kind of one and the same reason. We are going to limit the amount of lawn that any house could put in. And part of that limitation is, I think all of the limitation will be within the covenants, but it's also going to be in the pocketbook because Ute water is pricey. And so it takes, compared to your irrigation water. Any other questions?
I have several. Number one is, I live on Easter Hill. Your number one, what do you call it? Horse? Brother is Easter Hill. Please call it Easter Hill. It's a historic name for the town. Nobody probably knows that there used to be Easter sunrise services up there, but we do have documentation of that. I would rather have it called Easter Hill. That's historically correct. So is there going to be access to Easter Hill? Looks like that's a road that goes over onto Easter Hill. Is that a road or is that a trail?
This is,
Nope. There,
I'm sorry?
go ahead. Go ahead.
This is what you're calling Easter Hill.
Yes.
And this line is a bike trail that we believe is up there, or if it's not, we will improve it so that it does get you to the top of Easter Hill.
No, I meant auto traffic. Is that what is that road that goes from, no, up,
Oh,
that one, up,
so the dark line here is the road.
that right there.
And here's
That's Easter Hill.
Here's Easter Hill Road.
Yes.
And
you're
there-
connecting to us?
There is yes, there's the current trailhead
Right.
that everybody parks at.
Uh-huh, I know
And we'd
that.
be looking at improving that trailhead and making this connection here.
And what kind of upgrades are you going to make to Easter Hill Drive? Because it will not sustain much more than what we already have. It's a road that's meant for our 25 little subdivision. It's not meant, and we get a lot of traffic now with the trailhead, I understand. But if we're going to add a whole bunch of people coming down Easter Hill, that road will not be sufficient.
I'm going to want to get Trent Prohl up here to talk about the big picture on off-site road costs. I can tell you that we have done a traffic study. The traffic study looks at not only internal and where people are exiting where, but we were also asked by the city to look at off-site things along Broadway, down Redlands Parkway, down South Camp. And so this study is done for the city at their request as part of a scoping process that they then collect that information with all the other projects that are going on in the area so they can look at the traffic impacts holistically. And with that, they then set up their CIPs and things for those offsite improvements. This project will pay for some offsite improvements. We're not sure what those are at this point in time. It will be responsible for all of its internal infrastructure or the local roads, the collector roads and such are something that are worked out with the city. But the other thing is there's a traffic capacity payment that is applied to each house at time of building permit. And that traffic capacity payment a year ago was pretty low, and 4 years from now it's going to be at a max position. A couple thousand a year or two ago, 7,000 in another 3 or 4 years. And I think the number that Mr. Prohl used was if you were to average and say 5,000 per home, then you'd be in the $7 to $9 million that this project generates for the city to use for things like you just expressed. Well, whether they use it there or not is part of their decision and part of their CIP planning. Is that generally correct? I got a thumbs up from Trent. So, but he can also speak more in depth about other things if you'd like to hear more about that.
Okay, what about 23 Road and Broadway? That's a. Yes, they are.
What are you gonna do for a school? If that can't support
Do you want to answer the school one?
Broadway, Scenic, Wingate.
I'll start off and hand it to Doug, but we recognize that there's 3 school districts that come onto this property. We have tried to talk to the schools in the past. We're pleased that we have somebody with the school district here tonight and has been at all 3 meetings at Eddie Mort. And so we will be working with them on that, but I'm going to let Doug speak to this a little bit more.
Well, the answer to the question of what we're going to do about schools is what the school district and the city requires us to do. Already, there's a school fee that's paid that goes to the school district to improve schools. It's somewhere around $970 per unit. So that money is something that will be paid into the school district. Whether the school district wants a school on this site is up to the school district. And if the school district asks for a site here and we can identify one, we'll have a school there. But there are already 3 schools. Ted said 3 school districts. He meant three elementary schools that are assigned to parts of this project. Whether or not they all stay as is up, again, up to the school district. We have no control over that. But we're going to certainly work with the school district to try to be consistent with their plan so that they can best serve the students that are added here. They may go to Scenic, they may go to Broadway, they may go to Wingate, they may go to a new school. That's not anything that we have control over, but we're going to do what the city and the school district require us to do to support the schools. In our Colorado Springs project, we've probably dedicated school sites to districts there for 20 or 30 schools. 7 high schools, I know that we've dedicated sites for 7 high schools, several elementary schools, and we would do that here if it was required. But I don't know what the school district wants, and as the plan gets developed, that'll be part of the discussion. And again, there's not going to be a whole bunch of students next year coming out of this project, you know, there's going to be a few students added every year over a long period of time. So those impacts presumably can be absorbed by the system and how it develops.
Well, but it's not just gonna impact the elementaries. All those kids are gonna go to the middle school and.
Right,
high
but
school.
do you really, yeah, I know they're going to have to be middle schools and they're going to have to be high schools. But again, we don't do the planning for the school. The school district has to plan for what they need, and they have to assess whatever charges or extractions they can legally assess against us to help pay for that. But we can't make that decision. That's up to the
Okay.
school district.
Does the city work with the school district? What's the school district saying?
Somewhere around 800 students on full build-out of this. I don't think that.
The one thing is for taking, that allows me.
So we do anticipate somewhere around 800 to 815 or 20 students. We have a demographer that does that. It is right in the area of Broadway, Scenic, and Wingate for elementary. Wingate's close to capacity, Scenic's beyond capacity. Broadway can take right now 147 students. Redlands Middle can take a few more students. We could do an add-on there and get to those students. Probably the biggest one, and it's the buzz in the community is Grand Junction High School and Fruita Monument High School. So where do we send those kids at that time? So again, if it's 24 years down the road, I hope Junction High School is rebuilt by then. But in Fruita Monument, we'll have to add on to that as well. So we're planning, we're working, same thing. We'll work with them, and there is a fee in lieu of that they just mentioned. So I think it's $920. That's $1.5 million we'll get out of this project. That's maybe a small addition on one school. So we're definitely working together. We'll work with the city, and we're all in communication with each other. So we know it's going to be an issue, but luckily we have a little time to deal with that.
I just want to say one other thing. The number one draw to a master plan community is the schools and how good they are. And if you have good schools, it increases your values tremendously. So we have an incentive to have good schools that are not over capacity and all that. So we have a financial incentive to make sure the schools work. So we're going to work closely with the district to make sure that there is good plan for the schools and these students are going to get well served, because that's in our interest to have that happen. Nobody wants to buy a home in a community where the schools suck. So we have and I don't have the answer again, because the school is going to have to tell us what the needs are and where they want facilities and what they'd like us to contribute. But we do want to see the schools work for sure.
There were some transportation and traffic questions. There may be more. Trent Prawl, Head of Public Works, take advantage of him while he's up here.
Great, thanks, Ted. So some of the questions that came up last night were in regards to, or at least the sense that Redlands Parkway and, sorry, I just recognized some folks here that are pretty close to me personally. So anyway, it kind of threw me off here a little bit. Anyway, but Redlands Parkway and C340 are both, as most can tell, are not nearing capacity, but they're definitely a lot more traffic there than has been there historically. And so normally what we call a 3-lane road or a collector road, center turn lane, 1 lane each direction, could handle about 20,000 cars per day. And both of those facilities are running up around 14,000 cars per day. And so we know that we're getting close to the time when we're going to have to improve or widen both C340 or Broadway, as well as Redlands Parkway north of the roundabout. South of the roundabout, there's plenty of capacity there for any of the anticipated growth down South Camp Road, this development here, or even further west towards Tierrado. We'll be working very closely with CDOT and Mesa County in preparing for those improvements. And again, as I think Doug mentioned at the very beginning, this growth doesn't happen immediately. It's 80 homes a year, ideally, on their path here, as well as the other growth that happens, say, at Magnus Court or other properties yet to be developed further out here on the Redlands. So that'll happen gradually over time. And so it's not like we need to widen C340 in the next 5 years. It's probably in the next 10 to 15 years that we'll be looking at that, as well as Redlands Parkway to the north of the roundabout there. As far as the cost for all that, we have a lot of that estimated right around $30 million, $31 million. This development, as Ted referenced, will put towards transportation impact fees, or what we call transportation capacity payments. They'll put up in between $7 to $9 million towards that. The balance would be paid for by either sales tax dollars or other transportation impact fees collected from other developments in the Redlands, or other state and federal funds, depending on the scope of work there. But we know that a majority of the traffic is going to come out on probably 23 Road, or else over here onto South Camp, either South Camp Road or up here onto Redlands Parkway, just south of the roundabout, which sits just off the screen here. A very small amount will be coming out the south end to access Wingate Elementary, but really there aren't any other demands going back and forth, and this circuitous route in through here would probably discourage any cut-through traffic coming from here to get over to C340 or anything like that. As far as the Easter Hill connection in through here, we'd be working with Mesa County on any improvements to that. But most likely a majority of the traffic, even in here, there might be a small amount that comes out that way. But again, the majority and the main entry point, at least as proposed right now by the developer, would be coming out 23 Road or out here onto South Camp Road. I believe there was a question back here.
Yeah, on the South Camp Road there, are you proposing possibly a traffic light?
So
South Camp and Parkway?
So South Camp and the Riverside Parkway, Redlands Parkway, and South Broadway right in through here. Odds are most likely that would end up being a roundabout as opposed to a traffic signal. But again, that intersection control will be decided at a later date and confirmed at a later date.
Will the density then also go ahead and conduct what the speed limit is on Redlands Parkway then too? Right now it's 45 miles an hour. With the density coming along, would that speed limit be reduced?
Speed limit most likely would be reduced, especially east of that right there, east of that intersection right there. That would be reduced at least up through Redlands Parkway, up through C340. And then north of the roundabout, it will depend on what those, what the traffic counts are and what the lane configuration is and so forth. But studies would be done then at that point to determine the proper speed limit.
As long as I have the microphone, can I ask a couple questions of La Plata? Not to steer you away there, Trent, but I am living at 2225 Redlands Parkway, so I am very close to your parcel 5. I was wondering what that commercial space is going to look like, if there is concern or you're taking into consideration any kind of light pollution, and what the multifamily units are going to be proposed to look like.
So we don't have any particular uses in mind for that commercial space. It would be the type of commercial space which served the neighborhood, the community, as opposed to attracting a lot of people from outside. You know, local coffee shop, dry cleaner, those kind of services that the residents might use. Yeah, maybe a bike shop, something like that. But we don't have any particular uses identified yet. Depends on market and things like that. Light pollution would be something that we'd be sensitive to. We know how that can affect a neighborhood. So yeah, we not going to do a project that has big bright lights like a baseball field or something like that. So that'd be part of the design, and but we don't have a particular design for this yet, so I can't answer the specifics of that. We would have to go through a public process to get that approved. It has zoning, but we still have to go get a plan approved and plat it and all that. So there will be additional opportunity to discuss that. As far as the other parcel, the parcel 1, Ted referred to that as multifamily. I think it'd be more accurate to refer to it as high density. Multifamily to us connotes attached product. It could be attached product, townhomes or fourplexes or something like that. It could be single family detached on small lots that has high density. We've done product like that in Colorado Springs that's been very successful. But again, we haven't done a specific plan for that site yet. So it's premature to tell you exactly what kind of product. Again, it'll have to go through a process. I can also tell you that that particular site does have some wetlands on it. They may or may not be jurisdictional. We're figuring that out. Obviously, if there are wetlands, we have to honor those. We can't develop around those. We have to provide new wetlands or preserve those. So all that will help dictate what kind of product goes there. But it's going to be high quality, attractive housing.
One more question. Are the green spaces set in stone, or are those subject to change over the years?
Well, they're not set in stone, but if they were going to be changed, you have to go through another process to get approval and have the plan amended and so forth. I can tell you that we're committed to preserving those main green spaces that we showed you on the plan, the trail system. That's the whole theme of this project. So I'd say the trails and the Four Brothers system, as far as we're concerned, unless we were forced to do something else, those would stay. I would say there's some other things going on. The city parks department has indicated a desire to have a different kind of open space than what we're showing. They would like they've said they might want a big soccer field or something like that on this site. We're not really in favor of that. We don't think, first of all, there's a place that really lends itself to that kind of use, but it could be done, and if the city requires that, we might have to do that, and so that would change what you see here. We also anticipate that there would be a lot of other green space, small community parks or pocket parks, as we call them, that are developed in each neighborhood as we design it. You see those big bubbles there of, that's not all going to be house. There's going to be some green space in all those neighborhoods. So I would say, if anything, there'll be more green space when this is actually built out than less, but it certainly could change. Cody, you want to add anything?
So the density that we were talking about earlier, that actually anticipates additional open space within those bubbles. And so parks as Doug mentioned, parks, pocket parks, additional open space. So when you see a bubble like that, it's not purely all homes. When we get into the design of each of these development bubbles, that's when it starts to, oh, okay, all right, so here's an entry. It has a pocket park at the entry. These are the kinds of things that don't show up on just a master plan like this. And so, but those are anticipated, and it's also built into the density that we are anticipating.
One last thing on that is the plan we submit, the ODP, is committing to 198 acres of open space. That may shift around, but the city will track it over the years to be sure we have 198 acres of open space. We don't think that'll be a problem at all. And so it's not a concern, but it could shift around relative to all the things you've heard. One last thing is, I think this area is already protected by a night sky ordinance. Is that the Redlands, Kristen, or? It's not? Okay. I'm not sure I can hear your answer, Kristen. Kristen's the senior planner on this project.
I don't know that the ordinance that the county has in place it extends on the east side of South Camp Road. If you look out at, say, for example, the Trails West and Renaissance subdivision, they have typical lighting standards. But on the west side, the new subdivision over there, can't remember what it's called, they were able to reduce the number of lights over there. The plan will be routed to the Colorado National Monument staff and to see if they would like to see the dark sky extended to the east to apply to this project.
We would very much embrace the dark sky ordinances and with or without. Under one case, I think it might be the city saying you can go ahead. Under another case, we have to ask and go through a process. But we've been successful in a number of projects being able to reduce the number of street lights. They all have to face down. You can't shine them up. That's an ordinance already.
Yeah, I think my concern is really traffic, and I'd urge the city to really consider, first and foremost, if going through Canyon Rim and coming to a T intersection across the school is really a good plan. I hear things like not too many cars, not this or that, but I think the traffic for this whole area, all of us would agree, is a critical thing. So for me, the city needs to really do a good plan, not a yellow crayon that says, we've always had that on there. I think they need to really think through how you manage 1,800 homes and not use terms like a few cars this way, a few cars that way. Let's really make an infrastructure that supports this long term.
Thank you. We do. It puts those notes down.
And my concern is that you're out there in the evening now and it is totally dark. And the first house just this spring cropped up on the edge over there on the far side where the golf course is. Those are the first lights that have been across that whole area at all. So I don't know what's involved for dark sky. But I would think in this day and age that it wouldn't be a discussion. I think it should be mandatory, period, for everywhere actually in the valley, if you think about it. So
I don't think you'll find an argument here. Is this on? Can people hear me? There's no argument here on the dark sky.
I wanted to know, all this, all the trails and the ponds and the infrastructure, is that going to be done first, or in 30 years, these trails are going to be in? Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do. As you work through the phases, that phase gets complete. So, you know, if we were to look at phase one, that gets developed, there's little that changes on the rest of that property. It stays as it is today. It has the trails it has today, both the major trails as well as the social trails that are cutting through the property. And then as you move to phase two, that likewise, that area gets developed, but very little additional infrastructure is done outside of that. The trails in that area would get developed. We might have to, there might be a reason for fire protection to have to complete another road somewhere. But other than that, it's just per phase that those improvements happen.
Okay, so then the traffic on 23 Road, are you going to send that down to South Rim and then over to the Parkway, or is it going to go to 340 and down? I mean, 23 Road's only like 6 houses.
Oh, I got you. Just the stretch there that he's highlighting?
Well,
There's about 6 houses on that particular road.
right, but I'm talking about north of that. Yeah, right in there. Yeah. So it's got to connect, where are they gonna, I mean, because that road too is just not designed for any more traffic than it's got right now.
Right. We're looking at some reconfigurations to make it flow better. I do think that I think the city would say there's going to have to be some improvements at 23 and 340. And when that phase happens, let me put it this way. I'm not sure at what point it triggers making that improvement. And I don't know if Trent could add to that or not, if there's a known number or at what point, but certainly when the traffic is an issue, then that intersection will have to be, that off-site intersection that you're talking about would have to be taken care of.
So when does phase 1 start?
We are currently, it's actually on the ODP at this point in time, just you can't read it, but we have phase 1 is starting in next year. And so it's again, the start date is 2021. The phase 2 then would be 3 years later as a start date. And again, this is just something that we put to the city so that we can all plan for that and look at when those numbers accrue. If the economy's just fantastic, there's nothing more that La Plata would want to do than open up a couple more phases. That would have to be a pretty tremendous economy. And on the other hand, if things drop off, it may not start in 3 years. But we have to have a plan of some sort. So at this point in time, phase 2, which is the 23 Road area you're talking about, would be in 2024, starting in 2024.
I have trouble getting out of South Broadway and Broadway connection because I have a constant stream because of that roundabout. I've got no stopping and I just get a constant stream and I can't get out onto Broadway. And if I go to 23 Road, that's a dangerous intersection at 23 Road and Broadway, 340. because of the hill that's there. And my other access is going all the way to Vista Grande, which may not be in the direction I need to go. I would like my light back.
Again, we appreciate your comment. We take your comment. We have a person here writing down all the comments. We deliver those comments to Planning Commission and Council, and we listen to them. So, and you have staff here listening to them. I just can't give you a hard answer on something like that.
Trent, you mentioned South Camp and Redlands Parkway, that intersection. Currently, right now, it's busy, especially when school gets in. And then with, I believe it's called the Riggs Hill development. Are you guys planning on doing anything extra with that intersection before that new development goes in? Because I'm sure with that and this, even though, I mean, it's phased, the traffic is going to increase significantly.
So in regards to the intersection improvements right here, I believe.
Yes.
Right, and Magnus Court will be coming down, or at least some of the traffic is proposed to come down. I think it's about half and half. Half comes down here to the south and half goes up to the north. I think this is 22.25 road, something like that. So in regards to the timing of improvements there, we know that there's a right turn decel lane that's needed off of Redlands Parkway to turn onto that. And then on the north side, on Broadway itself, we know that there's a left turn that's needed onto Reed Mesa. And so those improvements are in the works right now, or at least the one up there on Reed Mesa, that left turn. The right turn isn't needed until later on in that development. But depending on the timing of this development in this first phase here, yeah, we'll be looking at these intersections in through here as part of that development. And whether the developer puts those in or whether we use those transportation impact fee funds for those improvements are yet to be determined.
And then do you have any plans for widening South Camp at all, especially with the Granite Falls development?
So South Camp Road, if you notice, just last year we widened that to add the bike lanes out there. And right now there's only about 4,000 cars per day, just for reference, out there. And we primarily have a 3-lane section down through there. And like I said earlier, those 3-lane sections have capacity up to about 20,000 cars per day, depending on how you're doing on access control. But nonetheless, I mean, so there's plenty of capacity there for any of the proposed growth coming down there. Now, would additional sidewalks and trails be nice? Yeah, absolutely. So those will be part of future projects out through there. But we're doing pretty well with at least we have bike path now. I guess we're further down from the city limits all the way north up to South Broadway there. And the section that wasn't completed, Mesa County wasn't queued up to widen that, to add those bike lanes there. But you do have the concrete bike path to the south of that.
Okay, I have a couple of questions here. We still get the Daily Sentinel, and so in Sunday's edition, this was highlighted. Maybe not last Sunday, but a Sunday before. The trail system is what's really being concentrated on, and that was about the only thing the Daily Sentinel talked about. But all of this open space, the trail system, the parks, will the city of Grand Junction then be assuming all the maintenance of that?
So we are still working with the developer on who would be responsible for that, and whether or not there would be revenues through, there's a metro district that's proposed here that will have their own tax over and above what the city would normally tax residents. Right now, I think we tax about 8 mills plus your sales tax that you pay downtown, or a majority of our revenue into the city. We know that there will be additional impacts to city operations and so forth. So we're still working with the developer on potentially having a mill levy set aside to help us with those operations and maintenance of that and potentially streets and so forth, but primarily just the Parks and Rec side in particular.
Because I think you all realize how many times we're being come to for bonds and how many bond issues that's always on the ballot. And I can see the city, the school district is one of the prime examples that's always needing money. And so when you say this impact, and yeah, it's just going to come in phases and the city will be able to absorb it, it's not happening right now. So that's really my concern. The other thing is the police, the fire department. I mean, the trails are wonderful. I mean, I think it will be very attractive for that subdivision. But what does it do in the long term for the maintenance of a project? I mean, we're talking about almost a small city, town here. And what is that going to do in the long term, maintenance wise? And Zeroscape, we have Zeroscape, it's maintenance. We have a trail system. We back up to South Camp. We have a trail there that hasn't been maintained in probably 3 years, weeds all over the place. The trail itself is going to have to totally be replaced. So when I hear and when I read the Daily Sentinel, totally concentrating on trails and open space, you're talking about a lot of maintenance. And we're already talking about city, schools, fire, police wanting more and more money. So what's going to happen to us? Are we going to be taxed? Is our property tax going to be out of sight by the time we get done? So when I see big developments, I honestly think the big developments should be footing a lot of this cost. And then the other thing about public, when you talk about trails, where's all the public parking going to be? We've lived out there now for 18 years. I know how people are parking right now to get onto the trail systems. So you're talking about these subdivisions being impacted. Are you going to put public parking? Because you're advertising this as public, open space, trails. I mean, this is totally public. So if that's the case, then you need public parking to go into this. So I mean, I have a ton of questions just from this presentation. But the trails, I mean, you guys are really concentrating on the trails, and that could be a big problem in the future.
Let me ask you a question. Would you prefer that the trails be public or that we close them off and only let the residents use them?
So are you needing the city of Grand Junction to pay for the parks and the trails and the open space and the public parking? I guess
No.
that would be my
No,
question.
we're building it all.
And so,
And maintenance, do you think if the public is using those facilities and they're open to the public and every citizen in Grand Junction can use them, the city should not contribute anything to the cost of maintaining them?
well, I guess what my question is how much will the development pay for those? I know you're going to put them in, but I also know there's going to be high maintenance on those. And the HOA, can they then close them, or does the city then say, no, there are
Well, if they're public
trails?
trails, they're dedicated to the city, then the city would own them and the city would control them.
And they'll
There
maintain
are,
them.
there are two options here, okay? And it still has to be worked out with the city. We have a metro district that's been approved by the city that has the ability to levy a tax only on the residents of this project. So not you, not anybody else that lives in Grand Junction will pay this tax. Only the people that live in this neighborhood will pay that tax. That tax can be used for the construction and maintenance of all those trails. So, and if the, so that's one alternative. The other alternative is they all get dedicated to the city. They're city-owned trails, and the city maintains them. I anticipate that in the end, there's going to be some shared costs. We're going to build them all in the first place, and then the city will have to decide whether or not they're going to take over ownership and maintenance of the trails, in which case it's fair for them to pay at least part of the cost of operating them. That has not been agreed to yet. And in fact, the city may not even approve this plan because, as I said earlier, they've expressed a preference for soccer fields as opposed to trails. So that could happen. Those are details that'll come out in this process, and we'll know at the end of it what the question is. But I would disagree that that the residents of this project should pay 100% of the cost of maintenance when most of the use is by the public at large. That
Well,
doesn't seem fair to me.
Are you going to have public parking areas then? for
Well,
the
we're going to
public
have to
come?
provide some places for people to park, and we'll construct those. I mean, I don't think it's, yeah, we'll have to provide parking areas.
And the soccer areas would bring in a lot more public, which I don't know how much public you're wanting to be brought into this area, because that's going to impact your roads and the neighborhood and everything else. So I'm not sure where the city would be coming with a soccer field, except that we need soccer fields. But other than that, I don't think it's up to me to decide, whether the subdivision does it or the city does it. I'm just saying that the city needs to know, I mean, where's the city getting the money? That would be my question.
Well, you know where the city gets its money.
Yeah, I do. I do know.
There's a couple things that I'm going to tag on to. This, going back to the trails map, there's these little asterisks showing trailheads. This is the existing one at 23 Road, and this is the existing one at Easter Hill. And we know that there's not really one down here on Canyon Rim, but we are providing, Canyon Rim is being submitted soon, and we have, I believe it's 18 parking spaces for public use just down there alone to help relieve the people parking on street and at the end of that cul-de-sac. We have proposed an additional trailhead up above the BLM land, one in the project here, one in the project here. We see those all as having small parking lots. We don't want this to be asphalt. If we see, if the city does in fact want a larger park area, we're kind of identifying this area as to what that would be, whether it's, I mean, if it's soccer fields and or field even, you're looking at hundreds of parking spaces, or at least 100. So we're not necessarily on that same page, but if that's the way it goes, that's the way it goes. So we're thinking about those things. The other thing is, right now, the city has, or they will when it ratchets up, is it $1,700 a unit for a park fee? $1,230, did you say? Around $1,200 per unit as a fee that goes to the Parks Department for every house that gets built up here. And then finally, which is part of the negotiated thing that Doug was talking about, is an open space fee, which the city has the ability to either take the land or 10% of the appraised value of the land. And I'll let you work the math on that, but I'll tell you it's multiple millions. So there's already fees that are built in that are paid to the city on top of what gets constructed. So know that there's a huge contribution by the part of the developer on this.
What is the soil like up there? Is it the bentonite and the expansive soil?
Have we got soil tests back, Mark? Or
We've done preliminary soils tests, basically test pits rather than drilling. We first did the pits to give them an indication of what was there, and then we'll go back and do further studies out there. Bentonite, we have bentonite in the canyon rim area, but it is different up on the top. I think they've identified some bentonite, but it's not like it is down in the canyon rim area. So those studies will continue to be done as we move along. And we'll have requirements from the city and what we can do and how the foundations are constructed. So, Mark, anything else?
Hi, I just have a couple of questions. I live on Easter Hill and our property line is right against your property line. And I guess I'm hoping you guys are going to be considerate and not like build right next to our land. I mean.
so help me out here.
Yeah,
You
right up
have,
there.
you live there?
Yes, well, in that little, yeah.
Okay. And you are correct. It does back up to your property. You have the road, Easter Hill Road makes up this portion. And of course, all of that is currently being designated as open space. That's also part of the area where we've been asked to complete the trail loop and made an obligation to do. So I can't make commitments here, but I think whatever happens behind you won't be all that close behind you also because of slopes.
Yeah, I just hope, yeah, that'd be nice if you'd take that in consideration. Not
Just
right
to,
next to-
just to add on to that, typically when we develop our communities in Colorado Springs, when we develop up next to adjacent homes and neighborhoods such as yourself, we do try to create a buffer. And what Ted's alluding to is that trail loop that we're trying to connect, that could possibly be within that buffer that, we're not going to build necessarily, put a home on top of your property. And so I think that's definitely something that we can consider.
Okay.
That's, in that particular area has some topography,
Yeah.
and and so when the bubble shows it right next to your home,
Yeah,
that doesn't necessarily mean we would be putting homes right up to your property line. But that
Okay.
is something we can definitely consider.
all right, I appreciate that. And then I just had a question, do you guys do studies or anything on like the impact on wildlife, the nature, the birds, reptiles? I mean, I hear coyotes and we see deer and I think about what's going to happen when this starts. Are they all going to be run off or?
We do not do studies on those.
Okay,
If it was requested, I believe the Division of Wildlife is a review agency. And so they're all nodding their head yes. So when this project goes into the city, there's, I'm going to say 30 review agencies. It may be 15, it may be 45, but there's a lot of review agencies and the plan is circulated to them. We get feedback and we need to respond. We have to respond to that feedback.
okay. Thank you.
I just want to say that I'm very excited about this potential of this development of this private property, and it is definitely something that we need more of, is some very significant developments that are planned out.
Thank you.
Is it estimated that the impact fees will cover the capital and operational costs for Redlands 360?
I cannot answer that.
So impact fees cannot cover operations. I mean, it is for capital costs only, is the intent for any of those fees.
But Trent, didn't the city do a study that mentions, and you're going to do it Wednesday night, what the cost is to the current taxpayers for the Redlands 360 to be developed? Aren't there estimates on capital and operational costs from BCS?
Correct. So the impact fees, though, do not go towards operational costs. Those only go towards capital costs, if I understood your question correctly.
Well, I'm trying to figure out, so in essence, are the current taxpayers subsidizing both capital improvements and operational costs for this subdevelopment?
So, staff, you want to take a shot?
Thank you for that question. That's actually a great question. And many of you may have seen, there was, I think, some recent information for those that read the Sentinel about the fiscal impact for the development. And that was certainly a leading question about the results of that fiscal impact analysis. And the findings were that there is a deficit for both the capital that the project would contribute, as well as a deficit on the operating. That said, I would caveat both of those, maybe first taking on the capital, as the capital deficit is significantly driven by the policy choices that have been made about what the contributions are through what we call an impact fee program that the city has long had and recently updated, but not to what we call a full cost of covering a project's contribution to capital improvements. So that's been a policy choice by the city over time, and certainly recently as recently as last year. The other piece on the operating, again, just to be very clear that there is a deficit from this project, but I would caveat by saying that that is the case for all of our residential developments. And that is largely based off of how this state taxes and assesses property valuations on residential. Many of you may be tracking some of the recent conversations about Gallagher, but because the mill in this town is really quite low, and two, because of the Gallagher Amendment and how it sets its residential taxation rates, really drives that almost all residential development will not pay its own way. And that was information recently provided to our city council. The city actually hired through an outside consultant to take a look at that information, and the findings, if you will, of that consultancy was really that the deficit for this project is actually very normal for communities in Colorado and how they assess and collect fees and operations for residential development.
So I'm a resident near the Riggs Hill development, so we've been going through this process also for a long time. And the biggest concern from that development also was the traffic. And there was a traffic study, and they said 85% of the traffic from Riggs Hill will be going down to the intersection of South Broadway and Redlands Parkway. So it is going to impact that greatly. And I don't understand why these developments keep getting approved, and it seems like they all get approved. It doesn't matter what we try to do, but they all get approved, it seems like. In the city and county, they both say that they're not going to improve the roads. And we keep going through this. And this is a huge concern for the citizens of this area. And you guys keep saying you're not going to improve the roads, so we have to live with it. And I don't understand all the details of how roads get paid for. I just know that you're approving these developments. These developers are making millions and millions of dollars. They're the ones that are benefiting from this. The residents are not benefiting from this because our roads aren't getting fixed. They're not adding sidewalks. They're not adding rain gutters. We keep having to deal with this. Of course, I don't have the answer, and nobody probably does, but I think the city and the county, they really need to get it together and fix this, because all of the people here, the developers, the city and the county, we keep going through this, it seems like constantly, and there's no answers.
I just want to be sure that the Easter Hill area is still guaranteed their access to the water tank and access to the pond that we have, as in the quitclaim deed when this was all done. And these trails, I've been here for more than 40 years. I can tell you that the trails in that area precede me by a lot.
We got to start winding this down. I think we were committed to 7:30, so we'll maybe make this the last question.
I just have a question and a comment. When you start with the roads, are you gonna do all of the roads at once, or are the roads gonna be phased, and where are you gonna start with the roads?
The roads will be phased, and they will be relative to the phasing plan as it is currently. So this area happens, the roads in that area happen.
But
Yeah.
so like for the main road where it comes in by BLM, is that road also going to be phased, or is that going to be one continuous project to all the way to the commercial?
So if this area remains as phase 4, that would be the likely time that we would look at making that connection. And that's still, we have there's paperwork that Jane and the city has been putting together on that particular stretch of BLM Road.
And then you guys have really mentioned a lot about trails and open space, and I sure appreciate it. We run on Easter Hill. We do all sorts of stuff on there, but it's one thing for you to show us this and tell us what we want to hear, and it's another for you to actually prove it and do it. So please take the concerns of the citizens and know that we truly do cherish this area, and don't make it like Denver. We're not Denver. We don't want to be like Denver. Please, please listen to us, and please know in your hearts that it means a lot to us to have this area and to have the trails and to preserve it and to just be able to use it. I mean, like you guys said, we all feel as though it's part of our own because we've used it for so long. And we just, I mean, part of what we say probably doesn't carry a lot of weight, but just please know that it really does mean a lot to us.
Well, it does carry a lot of weight, and I think you heard Cody talk about the heart involved with this project.
Hear it, not actually what's going to happen. So, I mean, there is a difference, what actually happens versus the lip service that we get.
Could I just speak to that as the landowner? I'm very excited that I managed to get this group. I have been the landowner out there more than 20 years, and what you say is absolutely true. There are a lot of cynical developers out there, but these guys already have a proven track record. I would invite you to go down to Colorado Springs, see the kind of communities they have produced, because it's a rare breed, and I understand what you're saying. And I think I've shown some sympathy over the years allowing access out there. And I've had other offers from other people, and they've told me to put the fences up right away. They can't believe the level of access that has been granted, and they certainly wouldn't contemplate it in any future development they did. So I don't know if it's 1 in a million or what, but we have a group that is talented, skilled, they've got a proven track record, and they also have ties to this community. So I feel very blessed that they're here, and we thank you for your input. And I agree with you, we've got to deliver. Thank you.
I understand why you're cynical. There certainly are developers who don't do what they say. And just give us the chance to prove we do what we say. We have a set of company values that we live by. They guide everything we do. We have 7 core values. Everybody in the company knows them. Every project we do is governed by these. The number 1 item on that list, keep your promises. And we just promise we're going to do this trails and maintain public access. So please wait until we don't do that before you call me a liar, because we're going to do it.
I've lived here 3 years. It's just beautiful, and I want to thank you for letting us enjoy it.
And we're going to end up or conclude here. Jane's going to give you a couple of.
Yeah, last thing I want to
things.
say, I'm Jane Quimby. I'm the local project manager. So I'm the contact person for any of you that want to have future contact, comments, questions, inquiries about the property and how we're developing it. I want to go ahead and give you an email address. We are in the process of putting together a website. The website will be dedicated just to provide you with information about the development process coming over the next coming months and actually probably years. That will be a one-stop shop so that you can go and find all the documents. We'll probably have a construction schedule on there. We'll talk about the status of the trails and what we're doing in terms of the various steps throughout the development process. That's not quite ready to go. We're building content. I would anticipate it'll be ready to go within 30 days. If you want to send me an email at the email address I'm going to give you, then I'll be sure and notify you directly that the website is live. We're just not ready to give the URL out tonight, but the website, and you can contact me on this email address at any time. If you have questions, if you want to get together a small group of people in your neighborhood or a community group, we're going to be doing extensive community outreach where we'll be targeting specific user groups for trails, bikers versus hikers, walkers, the night sky people, all those sorts of things. The email address is Redlands 360, Redlands 360 info@gmail.com. So it's Redlands 360 info@gmail.com. So if you'll shoot me an email, I don't want to, most people put a phone number instead of email address. I'm not going to send you unsolicited, things on your email address. I'm not going to contact you unless you contact me. But if that's something you're interested in, shoot me an email, and then I'll have you kind of in my little distribution list so that when we're ready to go, we have that website up and operational. I'll just give you a notification, and that will be a place you can go. There'll also be a form on there for future contact, and you can use that email address to contact me at any time if you've got questions or comments or concerns about the project moving forward. So thanks everyone for coming tonight. We appreciate it.